Alright, so in continue to what we have done earlier, so what we have done is we have created subnet 00 and we have created subnet 01 series, and let's create the third subnet now. So to create the third subnet, to make our life easier, let me just copy paste it, and the third one is 10 series. So in the 10 series, let me just remove this. 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 and 1 0. So the first 2 bit 1 0 is the third subnet 1 0 1 0 1 0. Keep going, counting from 0. Remove this one. No color. Oh, let me just remove it. We'll insert it later. That makes our life easier. There we go. So, out of this 8 bits, the first 2 bits are for the subnet, and likewise the first 2 bits are for the subnet, first 2 bits are for the subnet, the first 2 bits are for the subnet. Keep going, the first 2 bits are for the subnet. So for the host portion, it is the remaining 6 bits, so starts with 0 and ends up to 6 ones. So what number is this? 6 zeros and 1 0. So meaning, another word, 1 0 and 6 zeros. 1 0 and 6 zeros. So what number is this? This number is 128. So if this is 128, definitely this must be 129. This must be 130, 131, 132. Keep going, and at the end, what is this number? 1 0 and 6 ones. So what what number is this? This is 191. So this is the broadcast address for subnet 10, and this is the network or subnet address 128. So the usable IP addresses range from 129 up to 190. So those are the usable IP addresses of subnet 10. So the last one, subnet number 4. So what is the subnet number 4? So let's go here. Oops, it looks a bit smaller. Let's do like this. All right. Let's remove this. Let's remove this. 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 So the subnet number 4 is 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, and 11. And the host address starting from 0 up to 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So what is this number? 1, 1 and 6 zeros. So that is 192. So this must be 193, 194, 195, 196, and this last one, all 15. Let's count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, not 5, 8 ones. So what is 8 ones? 2, 5, 5. So this 255, this last one, is the broadcast address for subnet 11, and this one is the network or subnet address of subnet 11. So we created 4 different subnet by borrowing 2 bits. So this is subnet 00, 01, 10, and this one is 11. So we have 4 different subnet. For subnet 00, it starts with 0 to 63. So 0 is the network address or subnet address of 00 subnet, and this is the broadcast address 63 for subnet 00. Likewise, for subnet 01, 64 is the subnet address, and 127 is the broadcast address for subnet 01. For subnet 10, 128 is the network or subnet address, and 191 is the broadcast address of subnet 10. And lastly, for subnet 11, 192 is the subnet or network address, and the last 255 is the broadcast address of subnet 11. So now we know how to create the subnet addresses or subnets and the corresponding subnet addresses for each of the subnet that we have created. So maybe we can assign for the subnet 00, we can assign to this network. And for, let's say, this is subnet 00. So we assign the IP addresses from this subnet 00. Let's say this one is for subnet 01. Oop. This one we can assign for subnet 10. And this one we can assign the corresponding IP address for subnet 11. So I hope it is clear, and I hope it's easy to understand. But there is a shortcut method or an easier way of calculating all this starting address, ending address, or usable IP addresses rather than really going down into or dig down into the binary format with the corresponding decimals and so on. So let's have a look if we can find an easier solution on how to create a shortcut method, or an easier way of finding the corresponding IP addresses of each of the subnets. So let's go to a different platform or different slide or different new board, and let's see how we can create a shortcut way of designing the IP addresses of each of the subnet. Let's say, okay, fine. So here is the IP address, and the new subnet mask was with 24 bits for the network, plus 2, so 26. 24 plus 2, 26. So the new subnet mask is 255.255.192. That's the new subnet mask. So from this actually new subnet mask, we know that the number of hosts in each of the network is 2 to the power 6, because there are 6 bits for the host, 2 to the power 6. So 64, 224, 428, 82, 224, 428, 82, 16, 16, 232, 32 to 64. So in each of the network, we know that there are 64 machines. So actually, we can calculate in a very easier way. So let's do that. So how do we do that? So let's say the first one, 192.168.20.0. That's the first starting address of the first subnet. But then how do I know for the next subnet or the second subnet? So the easier thing to know is the number of bits for each of the hosts. The number of bits for the host is 6. So to the power 6, as we say, 64. So 64 number of usable IP address, not usable, sorry, 64 IP addresses will be there in first subnet, so the next subnet will start with plus 64. So if that is the case, so 192.168.20.64, there we go. So that is the first starting address of the next subnet. How do I know this? Because there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bits for the host. So 2 to the power 6 is 64. So I know that in each subnet it consists of 64 possible IP addresses. 64 possible IP addresses. So if I start counting from 0, then if it ends to 63, that is 64. So the next starting IP address for the next subnet is 64. In other words, you can simply add the number of possible IP addresses looking into the bit portion of the host. So it's 6, so 2 to the power 6 is 64. So this is the first one, and the next one will start with, you add plus 64. So 192.168.20.64. That is the first one of the next subnet. So the first one for the third subnet is 192.168.20. Add 64 to 64, so that is 128. So that's the starting address of the third subnet. And likewise, the starting address of the fourth subnet is 192.168.20.128 plus 64, that is 192. So if this is the starting address, starting address, then you know what the ending address is. The ending address is 192.168.20.63. So that's the N. And if this is the starting address, then I know the ending is 192.168.20.127. This is the ending of the second subnet. And this 192.168.20.128 is the starting. If it is the starting address, then I know that the ending is 192.168.20.191. That's the N. And the last one, the last subnet, if this is the starting address, then I know the ending address is 192.168.20.255. So if this is the starting and if this is the ending, then anything in between, this two, 0 to 63, are the usable IP addresses. And if this is the starting and this is the ending, then I know that IP address usable are 65, 66, 67 up to 126. So you can imagine the same thing for the third subnet and for the fourth subnet as well. So this is the easiest way of knowing what is the starting IP address or the ending IP address of each of the subnets. So let me just recap. So how do I know that which one is the starting? By looking into the number of bits for the host. There are 6, so 2 to the power 6 is 64. So the starting IP address is 192.168.20.0. So you add 64, so that will be the next starting address. That will be the next starting address of the next subnet. And then you add 64 on top of it, that will be 128. That is the third starting address of the subnet. Likewise, you add 64, so 128 plus 64, that makes it 192, and that is the fourth starting address. So likewise, you can actually calculate the starting and the ending of the IP addresses.